I'm part of a presenting duo with my friend Mars Purnell, who's also with me.
Oh.
And today we're obviously D-Trout spinners. That's obvious, you know. But we're actually doing a special show today. We did a special show last week. We interviewed Luke Campbell. Special one today, we're interviewing Nigel Williams, who was the editor of The Office and Alan Partridge stuff. A lot of he's edited a lot of things basically, and you will probably know him most famously for being taped to a chair by Ricky Gervais. Literally taped his whole body taped to a chair, which is a video doing the rounds on YouTube. So that's who we're interviewing today. Mars, your thoughts on the interview?
Well, I should say, in our correspondence with Nigel, who's been so nice, he also said, I'll only do the interview if you have a beer with me. So
he did, yeah. Usually we hide our drink when we're interviewing someone. We put it in like a teacup or something, you know. Miles puts his cider in a.
I know. So I'm not drinking out of porcelain today. I'm drinking out of glass.
No, same here.
So yeah, cheers everyone. This is going to be quite.
We'll do it. Cheers with Nigel.
And if there's any technical glitches or if a swear word slips out, I know we don't. We swear quite a lot anyway. We swear. God, I've been listening back to our old tapes for that competition entry. I've got to stop swearing.
Yeah, you swear a lot. We don't swear too much.
But then I don't think any kids are going to listen to this, are they?
Look, shut the fuck up and let's get on with it.
Okay. To get started, I thought it would be quite nice to just go over some correspondence. So this is from Jack Bromfield. So he's a new listener. Welcome, Jack. He says, If you want to meet the real Gerald Preston, he's a regular at this pub, and he names the pub, but I'm keeping it very top secret because he doesn't
get someone nicks Gerald Preston from us.
Gerald, sign this. Get their nipples out. He's a regular at this. He even showed me his copy of Wild Weather once. So it's still got the Wild Weather. How mad is that? I know Gary is into sport. And I made this for a laugh. Maybe try a few on him. So I've come up with this game show, right? It's called Prem Busters. Basically, right, you need to try and get the Premiership player from past or present from a sort of cryptic clue in that.
Now I'm going to reveal Mars did do one to me off air, like before, a few days ago, and I got it straight away, didn't I? But you can do that one as an example.
Yeah. So one of the examples is and bear in mind, I don't know who any of these fellas are. No. As well. The Jamaican fella knows that in the War of Roses, the roses were red and ... And the initials for that were DY.
You didn't even give me the initials. I actually got it before you gave me the initials.
All right, now you both.
No, I'm just saying. No, because I knew with the War of the Roses it was going to be York or Lancashire, something like that. So I know Dwight York. I did Dwight York.
Dwight York. White York.
And do you think he played best as part of a front two or sort of on his own as a lone striker?
Do you want the next one?
Yeah. Move on.
So the next one is Big Ben is in a tent of his own. SC. It's quite good, that one. Do you need a tip?
No.
Big Ben is
no.
And it's in London.
SC.
Yeah. What's the word for on your own? If you're on your own, what are you?
Lone.
Alone, sort of. But what's another word for alone?
Solitary. Sol Campbell.
Well done.
Oh, Sol Campbell. Yeah, Sol Campbell.
Sol Campbell. That river by the Olympic Park will cut you if you're not careful. LS.
Well, that's Thames. Sharp.
Yeah.
Lee Sharp.
Well done.
He's a blast from the past because he hasn't been, as you know, he hasn't played for quite a long time.
Well, yeah, I've been saying that for years.
Yeah. Get Lee Sharp back to Manchester United.
Tanning shop. RP.
That's the clue. Tanning shop.
Yes. Short one, that. When you go to the tanning shop, what are those things called in the sort of coffin case, I suppose?
Lights.
Yeah. Sort of. They are lights, but what are the sort of cylindrical things called?
I don't know.
What does it emit?
Emit UV.
A UV
ray. Oh, yeah. Ray Parlour.
Yeah, well done. One of my favourites he is.
Anyway, I think we'll leave it there because we're
Yeah,
going to go.
but they are more. I'll post
That's great. Yeah, thanks. What was his name?
I'll post Twitter the rest of those, Jack. That's a fun game though.
Yeah, Jack. That's really good.
I'm learning the names of Premiership footballers that I would almost certainly forget straight away.
Lee Sharp. He's on the Lee Sharp bandwagon. No, but they're really good and actually really good clues. So nice one.
Good one. If you want to send us your homemade Rockbusters and your games for us to play, email in spinnerspodcast@gmail.com or spinnerspodcast on Twitter. But for now,
Nigel. Well, today, Miles, we've got a very special guest, and I've just checked his name. His name is definitely Nigel Williams. He's an editor, and he's edited any number of comedy shows, Alan Partridge, Outnumbered, Extras, but most pertinently for our podcast, The Office. And so we're going to just be chatting to him today about those days and his time with Ricky and Steve. So Nigel, thanks for doing this.
Absolute pleasure. Nice to see you guys. First things first, when I agreed to do this, we said we were going to have a beer together. I want proof that you've got alcohol on the go.
I have some wine here, as I told you.
Well, I've got my Guinness. It's quite early, but
Guinness. Do you like Guinness? I can't stand Guinness.
I never used to, but I've got the taste for it over lockdown. Yeah.
It's the editor's choice. The editor's choice of drink is Guinness. Yeah, so we're all having a little drink and a little vape as well. I'm not hiding that.
Yeah, nice one.
So Nigel, just take us back to the beginning, really. How did you end up working with Ricky on The Office?
Well, like all these things, there was a lot of luck involved. So I started off like in 1989 or something as a runner, making tea and coffee, and I did that for like 6 months. And then I got to edit assist, and then I did that for about 3 years, and then started dabbling in a bit of editing. Just doing sort of weekend stuff, and I was doing wedding videos and just anything to sort of push my career forward. And then I got a few breaks editing. You've probably heard of it. It's a feature film. You must have seen it. It's way up. It's highly thought of. It's called Chubby Brown Down Under and Other Sticky Regions. Have you guys seen that? It's a classic.
Not familiar with it, but
I think it was on my film. I think it was on my film course.
Well, Chubby Brown is a highly non-PC.
Was that Roy Chubby Brown?
Yeah,
I know of him. Yeah.
And basically, the movie was him in Blackpool. It's all filmed pretty much on a black curtain, so it could have been anywhere, and it did actually get a cinema release.
Oh my word!
I know. So I did. His opening, he bursts out of a curtain. And it's basically a woman with her legs open, and he bursts out of the curtain. And
Mrs. Brown's Boys does that now.
Yeah. It's a classic anyway. I highly recommend it. So I got that film, and then I did a bit of I did Lee Evans as a stand-up show and a few other things. But it was still really early days in my career. And then one weekend, it was Ash actually, the producer of The Office. He came into the place I was working and said, "We've got a little pilot. It's only going to take a week, but we need someone to work over the weekend." And so it was a Saturday that we started editing it, and Anil Gupta was the director at the time, so he did like the first pilot of The Office, and then this lanky bloke and this little chubby guy came in at the end of it and sort of had a look through, and they weren't that happy with the way that the pilot was, because it wasn't very close to their vision really. I then spent another few days just with Steve, and then Ricky had come in at the end of it to try and get it more to the tone of what they wanted. And then it went off to the BBC, but it did go off to the BBC and it got commissioned, but it still wasn't really what they wanted. So eventually, when it got commissioned, Anil got exec producer, and Steve and Ricky said, "Well, we'll only do the series if we get to direct it."
So that's CD Boss, I guess.
Actually, the CD Boss, which was the 8-minute taster tape, Steve did that on his own.
Okay.
So that was like, while he was doing a producer course, he did that, and that was kind of a rough guide. And then the BBC gave us money to then make Pilot that Anil directed. But it was weird because it had voiceover of John Nettles. Do you know him, the actor?
Oh, yeah.
So it had him, I think it exists on a DVD somewhere, but it's basically him saying, it's David Brent's first day at Wernham Hall, you know, that sort of thing. He arrives, and it was all voiceover led and not really what Ricky and Steve wanted at all. So, and I think it had a bit of music on it and stuff like that. So total luck that I did that. And then luckily they called me back once it got commissioned, and we got to do the series.
Wow.
It's such a big part of it, isn't it? Like the mockumentary format, it kind of makes the comedy. Imagine if it had like that voiceover and the music and that sort of instructional led telling you how to feel at certain moments. Like, because editing is so tied to that. Like, were you working quite closely with like Ricky and Steve when you were editing the final cut?
I mean, massively. They had a huge vision for what they wanted, and because I was kind of new to editing, what they were asking me to do wasn't that weird, because you know, I was a blank canvas. So when they were saying elongate this, nowadays, you know, it is done a lot, but most of my approach to comedy editing now is just, certainly when I'm doing my assemble edits without a director, you know, when you're getting the rushes and they're off shooting, I just keep everything as tight as I can just to keep the pace up. In my head, it's just keep it tight, without any sort of long pauses or whatever. And then I open it if I need to the point where sometimes I sort of over tighten and then have to loosen it up a bit. But for The Office, it was kind of the opposite. It was all about those long, excruciating moments that we all know. And we use Spinal Tap. Do you know the film Spinal Tap?
Oh, yeah. Love it.
So they were big fans of that, and I love that film as well. And we use that as quite a big reference, because you know, there are massive cheats, even though it's a docu style. If you actually analysed it, there's no way that a camera could sort of get from the front door to a top shot of them walking through, and that's what Spinal Tap did. But once you kind of sell the docu feel, you can get away with so much. You're cheating the audience, and you don't do it within the first bit, but then as the series went on, you could cheat so much.
So do you feel like it sounds like you actually played slightly more of a role than just an editor would? You were actually involved in those sort of decisions to get rid of the voiceover. And I know Ricky and Steve probably ultimately made the decision, but it sounds like you're probably quite active in that process to get it to what we all know and love today.
Do you know what? I would say nowadays I have a lot of say in how shows are put together, but back then it was all driven by pretty much Ricky and Steve. I mean, they would say to me, do you find this funny, or what do you think of this, or whatever. So there was a sounding board of like using me as the public before it went out on air. But they were so focused on what they wanted. I'd love to take credit for it, but it was them.
And how did their tightness of control, as you say, which contrasts probably to other projects you've worked on since then, how did that affect your editing process? Because presumably then they were you were editing it, but they were making some of the decisions that you would on another show you would make those decisions, but they were making those decisions for you some of the time. But how did that kind of impact on your process as an editor? Is it a nicer experience or better to have more control?
I love it when I take ownership of a show. You know, the show that I've just finished cutting a show called Motherland. Do you know?
Yeah, see Mother. It's great.
Yeah, it's a really good show. Yeah, so I've just done series 3 of that, and because we're in lockdown or whatever, I was getting the rushes, and then I was just as a sort of aside for me, editing. It's all about the organisation. So I can get a pile of rushes for a day, and then I get slightly overwhelmed looking at it, thinking, how the hell is this going to work? And then I can spend a whole morning just subbing it down and getting all my jigsaw pieces together, labeling it all, getting the inwards and outwards and all that stuff. And to me, it's like it's having all those jigsaw pieces laid out in front of me. And then I can kind of relax and go, right, okay, I'm off. And so I was doing that with Motherland. And then I was putting music on it, whatever. And then before it went out to the director, I try and get titles on it. I try and get music. So when the first cut, it can be like 5 minutes over time, but it's a viewing experience that isn't going to freak out all the execs. They're not going to go, oh my God, it's so slow. There's going to be things that aren't working, but you know, I edit it as scripted, but with a lot of my sort of take on it. so camera angles and tightens and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like completely sort of, you do live with it for so long that you take ownership of it. But I never felt I had that with The Office, because they were so in control of it, whatever. And because I was sort of learning on the job as well. So, a little upstart saying, no, I'm doing it my way would not have gone down well.
Yeah, that must have been so nice, though, because it was so unconventional, wasn't it? Like the making of that show. Like there is that school of thought that says, it wouldn't be made today because Ricky and Steve were such auteurs over it. It was quite a daring piece to do. And obviously this being like maybe your first like big job, that what an amazing thing to be part of. Are you still in touch with like Ricky and Steve?
I did all of The Office, including the Christmas specials, and then I did extras, and then they asked me to do Life's Too Short, the pilot, and I couldn't do that.
wow.
And that is when we sort of went our separate ways. And it often happens, that I don't kick myself at all about people that I worked with 10 years ago. I'm pretty sure, or even work with now, in 10 years later, I might not be working with those people, because editing is all your schedules have got to sort of line up. You can go from one job, love the director, say, oh, I'm only going to work with you, and then you'll pick another job while he's doing something else, and then you fall out of sync. Yeah. So that did happen with Ricky and Steve. Bizarrely, so I went on to a show called Episodes, which
Matt LeBlanc,
So again, I pretty much got that because of my track record with The Office and extras and whatever. So I've got a huge amount to be thankful for. But I spent 6 years out in America on and off doing episodes, and I was editing. David Crane was one of the writers of he wrote Friends, and I was editing in his back garden in his little, well, I say shed, it was like this amazing summer house in Santa Barbara, and I did 6 years of that, and they flew my family over, and it was
It's tough life, Nigel, tough life.
I know, I am showing off a bit, but it's like one of those sort of kick me moments. Did that really happen?
No, it's not showing off.
So I did that episode, and then what this was leading to was that one of the girls in Episodes, Mercedes, she's a blonde actress, she's brilliant. We were at a rap party in LA, and then I walked in this bar, and Steve Merchant is standing at the bar.
Can't miss him, can you?
Yes. So we had a conversation. It was great to see him, had a big hug and all that stuff. And then he said, "Oh, why don't you come over to the house the next day?" Basically, it turned out that he's going out with Mercedes, and I spent the day at their Hollywood Hills house, which was one of those again.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
What was his house like?
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, I think he used to belong to Ellen DeGeneres.
God, that's mental.
Nice house and a really lovely day.
So do you ever see him socially, or like
I haven't seen him over here, although I get emails from him every now and again. He there was a director up for a job recently, and he contacted me, and I'd worked with her, and he just said, what's your take on this person? Yeah, I'm hoping our paths are going to cross again, but like with all these people, you don't want to hassle them too much because you know how busy they are.
Yeah,
we have got a track record, and I feel like I could reach out to him. Actually, I did reach out to him for some information about stuff. So yeah, he's a really good guy, Steve.
Yeah, if you could hassle them both a bit to come on our show, would be very
okay.
Yeah,
just stop what you do. This, I'm on it.
We were having a little chat off there. I don't mind saying, and you actually mentioned that you kind of met and spent time with Karl as well, and that for our audience that would be quite interesting. So, what sort of time did you spend with Karl back in those days?
Well, yeah, I got to know Karl just through Steve and Ricky, because they were doing the XFM show at the time of doing The Office as well. And Karl used to sort of come in at the end of a day or during the day and just sit at the back of the edit suite, just speak to Ricky and Steve about stuff. I think we went to the pub a couple of times. I'm sure we did, at the Bricklayers Arms in Soho. And then Karl started doing a bit of editing. Not sure what it was for, actually, but it was sort of maybe stuff for Ricky's website or whatever. Started doing a bit of editing, and then would phone me up and just for a bit of advice, because he was editing on Final Cut, and so that happened a few times. But yeah, I haven't seen Karl for years.
No, it's really interesting.
Did you ever listen to the XFM shows?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I loved it, actually. I thought it was really funny. I was saying I used to cut wedding videos before I started sort of doing proper comedy, and Steve knew that I did this, and he used to bring me in buying cassette tapes of like the best wedding video tracks ever, because they're such musos, aren't they? So still got that tape somewhere.
Oh, fascinating. Just returning to like editing, what was it like the actual process of like working with them? Like, what were their dynamics like together? Because loads of our listeners like speculate on like who provided like the humour, who provided the heart, you know.
So Steve was an absolute workaholic. So he would come in at 8 o'clock in the morning and we'd still be there. I mean, I remember some Sundays we were still there at like midnight, you know, poor runners outside wanting to go home. But it was all about trying to get it right and trying to fit it in. And Steve was such an attention to detail. So it was all about what we called in the trade frame fucking. Literally, like he'd say 1 frame back, 2 frames forward. You know, it was all that. And we'd spend like half a day looking for one reaction from Tim. I remember this specifically because it was like, God, you know, I've got patience, but it was literally like 5 hours of just trawling through for a Tim looking up to the camera sort of thing.
Wow.
And swapping it out and putting it back and juggling frames and all that stuff. But that stood me in really good stead, that attention to detail. Now when I do a job and the director goes, yeah, that's brilliant, I go, hang on, but don't we need days to finesse it? So Steve was absolutely attention to detail, and Ricky would come in at sort of 11 o'clock and then get bored by about 10 past 11.
We know what happens there.
And then start looking around for things to stick on my head.
Well, as you brought that up, let's come. You were taped to a chair, like Your Whole Body by Ricky Gervais. What was that like? And in general, what was it like working with Ricky in that sense, that part of Ricky, like the crazy kind ofness? I assume you haven't been struck to a chair since, but
no, I haven't. No, I mean the truth is that at the time I thought it was brilliant. I thought because the DVD sold 4 million copies or something. So I was getting on a train, or I took my kids to the cinema, and the guy taking the tickets at the cinema asked for my autograph.
Did he really?
And it was like crazy.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So this would happen every now and again, that I'd get recognised, and I sort of thought, wow, this is brilliant. And my name's on the map with editing and all that stuff. But I look back on it now and I kind of cringe, and my kids are like, Dad, how could you let that? Yeah, I think there's a bit of PTSD, because this always surprises people, but I haven't watched The Office since it went out.
Oh, really?
I guess maybe that is the trauma.
The trauma. Is that the same with things like Outnumbered? And do you not watch back your work, or do you just?
I tend not to. I watch them when they go out, because once I've handed in my finished offline, it then has various stages of dubbing and music added and graded and all that stuff. So it's really good to see it, the final sort of polished thing. But I don't really go back and watch. The only thing that I go back and have seen and shown my kids is a show called Mongrels. Have you heard of Mongrels?
Yeah,
I haven't seen it.
So I'd really advise you guys and your listeners to check out some clips on it. It's an adult puppet show. It was on BBC Three when it first started, and the pitch was like Family Guy with puppets. So it's very irreverent, lots of swearing, and because it's puppets you could get away with so much. But there's some, and there was always a music song on there and whatever, and I showed it to my kids, and they're at the age now sort of 18 plus, and they just love it. And it's like, why did it? We did 2 series of it and it never went any further, and it's one of those that I just thought, oh, that's one that really slipped through the net, because it just looks beautiful. And it's, if you YouTube Mongrels song, some of those songs are just so well done. I think there's actually, you said I'm allowed to swear, there's a song called I'm a Cunt. So you can beep that, but that's the sort of thing that we were up against. But it was brilliant. I just love that show so much.
That is a brilliant idea. It kind of reminds me of what's that, Avenue Q? Have you seen Avenue Q?
Yeah. It
really reminds me of that.
I mean, they had a really good cast as well. But yeah, check it out anyway.
On that kind of note about sort of comedy, like both modern comedies and obviously you're like part of the staple of, you know, British comedies, and things like Alan Partridge, like these things are so revered and everyone loves them, right? What do you think of like the current sort of state of like comedy on both like the BBC, but like on sort of television generally, whether it's like streaming platforms? I'm just interested about the BBC. because I know it's such a big thing there, you know, with BBC 4 being cut, and you have the success of Detectorists and Joe Brand's comedy, but also, you know, the fact that now BBC 3 is being brought back as a channel. Like, it's changed so much, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit of a worry, the situation of comedy at the moment, just because I think comedies are quite hard to sell, certainly worldwide. So all these big dramas that are doing so well, you know, like The Bodyguard that was done, for the guy that did Line of Duty, and that kind of thing. They've got such mass appeal. But comedies, things like This Country, I mean, I'm sure people in America are not going to be trying to hunt that stuff out. So, yeah, it's a slightly tricky situation, I think, at the moment, comedy, although the phone hasn't stopped ringing. So stuff is being made. Yeah, I'm not sure it's quite as prolific as it was a few years ago, but I think it's good news that BBC 3 is coming back online, and I think, you know, RuPaul's Drag Race and things like that have had a huge impact on stuff like that. But yeah, was it I think W1A started BBC 4, didn't it? So shows like that, I guess they'll just move to BBC 3. Yeah, I mean, I've done some great stuff for BBC 3. I've you know, and stuff that, like Mongrels, started off on BBC 3, and that was a huge sort of punt for them. And a show called Bluestone 42, which was kind of it was like set in the army, but it was filmed in South Africa, and then they flew the Russians over here, and that was really, it was meant to be Afghanistan, but they filmed it in South Africa. But yeah, I just hope that the risks that they take are going to sort of keep coming, because yeah, it's a bit precarious, I'd say.
Yeah, do you find on that then, Nigel, that you are ever under pressure with your editing to edit, even if it's a British-made thing, to someone sort of saying to you explicitly or implicitly, like, you need to edit this for an American audience? So when you're thinking of your editing, like, does everything have to be international these days? Is that how yours?
To be honest, I've never come across it. I think, you know, it's either written as an international show, like Episodes was. I've never, no, is the truth. I think once they're written as script, they're sort of, the execs know what they're going to get. So yeah, I think you just have to sort of follow the pitch and know what your target is, and then don't deviate from that, really.
I think it's so hard, but now for something to have like its cultural moment, so many new shows get commissioned, you know, seemingly on a daily basis. I never personally, and I know shows do get successful, but comedy's really hard to hit the mainstream. I think, like you said, like The Office's cultural impact was huge. You know, I just don't see that happening today.
I think maybe Gavin and Stacey was the last big,
probably.
Reckon?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think, yeah, but you're right. I mean, because the audience is so split now, isn't it?
Absolutely,
my kids never watch BBC. It's always Netflix or Prime or whatever. So
it must be much harder to. There's more opportunities for shows to get made, I guess, and for things to get seen. But to build up a whole cultural kind of moment for it is much harder, because there's such a diverse array of platforms nowadays and mediums that comedy digest.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, I mean, also you never quite know what's going to be a hit or not. So, you know, you can read scripts, and, you know, there's a lot of stuff being made out there that isn't that great as well. So the amount of scripts that you can get and go, well, that didn't make me laugh at all. I'm obviously not going to name anything, but it's so true. I mean, it's very rare that you sort of, you're belly laughing on the tube, which happens with The Office.
That must be so hard as an editor as well, because you're watching the same jokes again and again and again. How do you keep yourself motivated to doing that? Comedy editing is such an art. Like, what makes great comedy in editing?
Well, for me, it's, I've already mentioned it. The first thing is to get those assemblies really tight, so that no one's freaking out. You barely got time to breathe. It's literally, that's how, depending on the project, but that's how I try and cut. So there's no sort of dead air in it or whatever. And then it's just going through, honing. And, you know, I always say, when people say, what's the secret to editing? It's just experience. And I think when you lay two shots together, you just know if it's not work. There's something in your gut that just tells you that it's not right, even if it's sort of slightly right. and then you go back and, you know, the house of cards can tumble down just by changing one shot. But it's just kind of instinct. And I'd say as you get older and more experienced, you just spend less time trying stuff that you know isn't going to work, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Because you've already tried it years ago where, you know, you put two shots together and, oh, I'm sure that I can make that work. But now I know, now I've got the confidence to go, you know, so I am quicker. There is definitely an experience that that helps you as you get older.
Do you ever get the urge to, or have you ever, as an editor, probably one of the most successful comedy editors in this country, do you ever kind of, and so you're always consuming this content, do you ever write anything yourself, or get the urge to do any writing? And because you could,
I'll leave that to the I leave that to the people that know what they're doing. Best I'll do is like if they're struggling for a line and, you know, in ADR in the edit suite, and I'll just suggest things there. But no, I think I know what I'm good at, and I'm just going to stick with that. But thanks about the best editor in the country. You're not right, but
no, I mean, and I'm not bullshitting there, like to be like, because you're on, so I'm trying to. And obviously, I don't know every other comedy editor in the country, but just from your bio, the things you've worked on, and you worked on pretty much all the episodes of all these things that, you know, the things we've listed, and The Office itself, and that's how you started. Clearly one of the most successful, let's say, at least.
That's very kind. There are some great editors out there, and I'm good mates with a lot of them. You know, what a really good mate, Mark Everson. Basically, he's a really good comedy editor, and then he went on to do the Paddington movie.
Okay.
Oh, bloody hell, really?
And then Paddington 2. And he's just doing Jamie the musical, and I think he's just got another job as well, which I better not say, but it's a huge kind of Disney thing. So yeah, he's making it big time. He's brilliant.
But less comedy.
Mighty Boosh, that was it.
Mighty Boosh.
Okay, yeah, that's, I love that.
So we do. It's weird, editors, because you don't tend to ever sit in a room together because you're obviously on separate projects.
So remote, yeah.
But when we're allowed, I do try and get a few of us in a pub together, and we slag off everyone we know.
God, I'd love to be at that pub. You've also worked on Gervais's stand-up shows, editing those together. I'm fascinated to know, like, what's the difference between cutting like live comedy as opposed to like scripted comedy, something where you are following more of a, you know, pattern, or maybe not necessarily. I mean,
well, yeah, I mean, stand-up is it's a lot simpler because it's normally only ever a like 4 or 5 day edit, and pretty much what normally happens is it's one stand-up performance is filmed over 2 nights, and then you spend the first kind of day picking your takes. So Ricky would be dressed in the same clothes. He'd be comparing one joke with the next and say, well, there was a slight slip up there, or we'll use that take, or the audio was better, or the delivery was better. Yeah. So you've got your A to B of the final performance with all the takes, and then you've got to kind of smooth the laughs. So not adding laughs really, because we try not to cheat, but it's just getting those tails where you're, again, it's all about crunching with a live performance. There's lots of sort of gaps, and there can be ums and ahs, and a lot of comedians have kind of nervous tics, you know, or they'll do things that are quite annoying, and so you're constantly snipping out any ah, you know, pause. And to do that, you're using maybe audience cutaways or you know, different shots. So yeah, I mean, it's linear, it's A to B, and it's quick, and then it's out the door, and it's pretty much done. But with scripted, you can have a scripted show, and then, like, for example, with The Office, all those talking heads to camera, there were so many times where they were just moved around. So the front one was at the end of the show, and then they'd be lifted out, and then right at the last minute during lock, Steve would say, oh, why don't we put that one here? And so and scenes as well, not necessarily The Office, although we did do it, but you're constantly like swapping things over, just trying to tell the story better.
Well, how long? So because you say a stand-up edit is quick, according to you, and you say 4 to 5 days. So to you, that's quick. To me, that seems like, wow, that seems like a long edit. But what's a typical edit of a sitcom episode? How long does that take?
as a very rough gauge, I would say for every day they shoot is a day that I rough assemble. So normally what happens is on a Monday they'll start filming, and then on a Tuesday I'll get those Monday's rushes and cut those scenes, and then that's how you know that you're not falling behind. You try and keep up with every day that they film, you're cutting. So that's called an assembly edit or a rough cut, which is my take on it. So I'll use wide shots and close-ups and whatever. And then after that, the director comes in and he could well say, no, you completely misunderstood the scene here. Why did you use that shot or whatever? But hopefully more likely than not, you've kind of got the basics of it. So to answer your question, roughly a week's shoot is a week's episode. And then, so that's a week's edit, and then probably 10 days after that with the director to fine tune and hone and get notes to execs and the channel, because the head of the channel will want to see it, and normally they're quite small notes from the channel, but
I'd never considered that, actually, that editing happens, the process starts whilst the shooting is still going on, because I just assume you get all the shooting, then send all the footage to an editor, and then he starts going through scratch. But it doesn't. That's not.
You haven't got time for that, no. But also the joy of doing it whilst they're still on set is that, like, for extras, I was at Pinewood in the studios, which is why I was taped up in a studio, because I was in the room upstairs. And so I could then say to Steve and Ricky, we need a shot of the pencil sharpener or whatever it is, Kate Winslet close-up or whatever that you didn't quite get or whatever. So if the set is still there, we can pick up shots just in case. I mean, more than likely than not, they might have moved on, or if they're on location, then you can't go back and get certain shots. But it's a good way to work though as well, because as an editor, you're stuck in your own little room. And you feel very detached. So when you're on set, you do feel, you're having lunch.
You're part of it.
I was going to say, you're literally stuck in your own little room.
That's true. Yeah. With extras, I was in an edit suite just up the road from where they were filming in the studio, and then I remember Ricky bringing all these amazing artists into my edit suite to sort of show them scenes, what they'd done or whatever. And one time, Chris Martin, have you seen the episode?
Yeah, of course.
He was sitting on my sofa in the back. And then he went off for lunch, and then Ricky phoned me and said, Chris Martin wondered if you want an apple pie and custard. And then he brought back an apple pie and custard. So how amazing is that?
Perks of the job.
I know. What a nice guy Chris Martin is.
Do you have like any standout scenes like from your editor work, from either from The Office or extras? What scenes are you proud of?
The scene that everyone remembers is the dance. Ricky.
Yeah.
And that took a long time. I remember trying to get that right, because again, it's all about reactions. It's all about when and again, I'm not taking credit for this because Ricky and Steve were so on it, but it did take an awfully long time to cut that. But going back, I mean, again, Steve would land in the edit suite and everything would revolve around Ricky's performance. Ricky's performance would be the first thing to be cut, and then you drop in all the bits around it, which I guess, is sort of understandable. But
I heard that scene was filmed about like 12 times because he just couldn't get through it without like gang around him watching him just cracking up.
Well, I would say that happened. I would say that happened in most of the. There were so many outtakes. Those talking heads. There was literally one frame later, and you would have seen Ricky burst up.
I wish you've seen stuff we all wish we'd seen.
Yeah. Somewhere on a cutting room floor, there's a lot of outtakes, and I think a lot of them were put on the DVD. But there were.
They are fantastic, those outtakes.
A lot more that you.
What happens to those old outtakes? Do they just get deleted, or does someone save them forever, just in case they ever like?
There used to be a thing where the BBC stored everything, so every shot that was filmed was put into a library, but I'm not sure it's all digital now anyway. But I'd be surprised if they're still in a warehouse somewhere, but who knows?
I wanted to ask about your, because I know that you've worked with Stuart Lee as well, and I'm a massissive fan of Stuart Lee. I love him, and I've seen him live so many times. I wanted to know what he's like to work with.
Do you know what? He was brilliant. I was quite scared of him coming into the edit.
That's what I think, though. I would.
Yeah, no, he was great actually. It was so good to work on that show. It was one of the best things I've worked on. The producer was a really fun bloke as well. So, and he knew Stuart from a long time ago. So that was the last Stuart Lee show, I think, the comedy vehicle that he did.
Brilliant.
But the really interesting thing about working with Stuart is that normally there's like you were asking, there's a rhythm to stand up where you know, Ricky or whoever would tell a joke, and then you wait for the applause, and then you come out wide, and then you go back in for the mid shot, and you know, just to keep everyone engaged. But you know, you can't just cut to an audience. You've got to wait for the right moment. But with Stuart Lee, his rhythm is so particular to himself that he'll tell a gag, and then you hold on his face just for him to look round, ready for the reaction or the disdain that he's got for the audience. You've got to make sure you capture that, and then you can come out. But that was quite a sort of learning curve. It was really interesting doing that show.
Yeah, just kind of, we don't want to keep you too long, Nigel, but it's been fascinating to chat to you. Just what if you were to give a piece of advice to someone who wants to get in the industry? I know a lot of people who listen to our show kind of are in that position. They want to get into the industry somehow. And what would your route into it seems quite kind of, there was some luck involved, some skill, but what one piece of advice would you give people wanting to get into either editing or writing or any part of the creative process?
I would say if you want it badly enough, don't give up. Just keep plugging away. Don't be afraid to start at the bottom of the run. So making tea and coffee, because it's such a good way in. And I always say that you can always tell the people that have been runners, because they're so nice in the edit suite when other runners come in.
Yeah.
The people that haven't, they're like really entitled.
So tough.
God. Yeah. So it's a really good grounding for you to start. And you get an overview of everything as a runner as well. You get to speak to directors, producers, whatever. You know, the salaries aren't great, but the experience you get can be amazing. So definitely do that, and then use any spare time you can to do a bit of editing, if editing is your thing, because editing really isn't for everyone. I mean, I think I've got the best job in the world, but you've got to be very organized, have loads of patience, and get on with people. I think, you know, you said earlier, what's the you know, secret to editing or whatever, and it is, you do need to know your way around a computer and how pictures cut together and whatever, but I'd say 80% of it is being able to get on with someone who you're spending 12 hours in a little dark room with, maybe being taped up.
Yeah.
Do you and just sort of as a final note to sort of wrap up on, do you keep up to date with like Ricky and Steve's careers? Do you watch like their output, like Fighting with My Family with Steve and Afterlife with Ricky? And what are your thoughts on their sort of subsequent work?
I haven't watched. I watched Life's Too Short, and I haven't watched anything of Ricky since then. My wife said Afterlife was really good, but no, I haven't seen anything that Ricky's done. But I have caught a lot of Steve stuff. So yeah, it's interesting you say that, because that does, maybe that's a little insight into, because I never fell out with Ricky. It was never like you know, we never had any problems or anything. We just went our own separate ways.
Yeah, life happens. Yeah.
But I can't bring myself to watch Afterlife, so maybe it's just jealousy that I didn't get asked back.
Would you be watching it thinking, oh, I'd have done that bit, I'd have done that bit, I'd have had a longer, I would have had a wide shot there. Yeah. I guess
I can never do that. It drives you nuts. I mean, I drive my wife nuts just watching any sort of TV and saying, oh, look at the way they did that. And I can never lose myself in a show. I'm always sort of analysing it or whatever. But yeah, but I think Steve's got a few interesting projects coming up over here. So yeah, that'll be good. I better not say what they are in case they're not green lit yet or whatever. But
sounds exciting though. Good luck.
And you've got the latest series of Motherland. Is that coming out soon? Like series 3?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's all done. So yeah, I reckon that should be coming out in the next few months, I guess. But we did a Christmas special, and I think that went down really well. And I'm just working on a show at the moment called Frayed, which is a Sky Australian co-production with Sarah Kendall. Do you know her? She's on.
Yeah, she's on Taskmaster.
Yeah. So she wrote it and is in it. That's by the same company that did Motherland, Merman, Sharon Horgan's company.
Yeah.
I'm doing that, and then there's a few things in the pipeline that in June, July, but not quite sure quite what.
Oh, so busy. Bloody hell.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's good. Do you know what? Because of lockdown in March, I thought I'd never work again.
But okay, that's good luck with all of those projects that you've got going on. Obviously, you get these projects because of the fact that, as I said before, you were incredibly successful with your previous work. So nice one, and thanks a lot for talking to us.
Oh, thanks. I've enjoyed it. It's been brilliant. Yeah, good luck with it all, guys.
Well, that was interesting. I mean, I great experience, but Nigel Baker, what was I thinking?
I did cut that out, obviously. If you
basically, you didn't hear that at the beginning. Basically, I introduced. I was really confident, wasn't I? I really went for it, but I called him Nigel.
Nigel Baker,
which was my old the handyman who comes around to my flat.
So I didn't know that your old handyman edited The Office. I didn't know that.
No, he does. I think it's just a little side job he does. No, I called him the wrong name, which is embarrassing. And both Mars and him sort of stayed silent. They didn't say anything, and I ploughed through this intro. But yeah, I got the name wrong. That's why I sort of made a little joke of it at the end. But yeah, overall, great experience, great guy. Really interesting to hear. He's probably, I'd say, out of everyone we've interviewed, this was the most technical interview, and that's a good thing. Like it was interesting. He talked widely about subjects that were interesting, but we got quite a bit of technical kind of detail about his role, and I thought that was interesting.
Well, it's interesting to hear from an expert. You know, comedy and editing, they're so linked, aren't they?
Yeah.
One informs the other, and vice versa. Like, such a huge part of it that often goes unrecognised. Actually,
I don't think people realise that. Yeah,
no.
And actually, you made me more aware of that, actually, because I knew, you know, you just watch something like Father Ted, you think that's great, you know, but you don't really. I wasn't as kind of. I knew that editing was important, of course, but I didn't really consciously think until a few years ago. And you was like, no, editing is like the key to. And I don't agree it's the key to comedy, but it's certainly a huge part of it. And
because it's a visual medium, isn't it?
A world leader.
Definitely, it's a visual medium, isn't it? So it's all on screen. What is in the frame, how it's put together after, how you mix it, how do you do the sound, and I'm really into my films, as you know, but I think it's because you take it for granted, because good editing is good when you don't notice it.
Good editing is good.
That's good. It's true. You don't notice it. So you take it for granted, but everything, it's so important. And I found that fascinating hearing from Nigel.
It was interesting to hear how he kind of and I kind of suspected this, but he's obviously hugely involved in his roles that he takes on. But with The Office, because we kind of knew that anyway, don't we? Like they took over every role and every facet of it. But it was interesting to hear how they did that with the editing as well. They did it with even when they employed someone to do something. Steve seemed to be sat with Nigel for like 8 hours a day some days, and from what he was saying, and Ricky, you know, when he could be bothered, kind of interested in the editing as well. But whereas on other jobs, Nigel said he was kind of free. He had a free rein to kind of do as he wanted, and interesting mix. Given that The Office was his first kind of ever role, it probably was good that he had a bit of hand holding then, but when he didn't really know as much about it as he does now. And as I say, now if you read off his credits, I said this to him in the interview, and I meant it. I wasn't like being, you know, sycophantic, and we've done interviews, you know, I'm not sycophantic, I'm not like, but he is like a leader in Britain, let's say British comedy, in editing. He's edited so many great shows, and fascinating to have him on, and really enjoyed the experience of interviewing him. And that's That's
Why
two
don't you
in a
marry
row
him?
now.
Why don't you marry him then?
Marry
Why don't you
him,
marry him?
marry
Why don't
him,
you...
marry him. I would actually.
And yeah, he said that he
Yeah.
invited us to the pub so we can have a little pint in person.
He's quite interested.
Which you
in
can
drinking.
do now. Which you can go to the pub now.
You can do. Well, we'll be talking a bit more about that on our next podcast. Although actually that won't be till Friday. So yeah, it's all opened up. Yeah, we might as well address that now. It's kind of, I think if you were in the pub yesterday at sort of 12 p.m. midday when they open, that's a problem. You know, I don't think everyone should rush back to the pub. So I believe you probably will be quite like more than once this week.
I did get quite bad FOMO yesterday because I was thinking, I'm a bit bored. It's quite sunny. Might just try you try and get a table for love nor money. You can't get one.
No,
it's impossible.
But it'll die down. Like we'll eventually meet in person, like in a few weeks probably, and do an in-person podcast like we used to do. But most of them will still be over Skype or Zoom or whatever medium. But yeah, anyway, that was Nigel Williams, and let us know what you thought about the interview. Let us know your thoughts in general over Twitter. By emails.
How do people get in touch, Gary? How do people get in touch, Gary?
I see you always do this. I'm doing this, but no. Well, so we're doing this in reverse because usually I just leave this to you, but I'm trying to do it myself this week, which could end in disaster. At Spinners Podcast and spinnerspodcast@gmail.com. That's how you get in touch.
Well done.
And you can do Miles's Instagram somehow. Find him. I don't know. I don't care about that. But or you could call my home phone. Cool. Yeah, Miles, final thoughts? Anything to say?
Final thoughts. Well, I would say do check out our recent chat with Luke Campbell, which went out earlier today. And also a massive, massive thank you to Cameron Williams. And I didn't get a chance to thank him on that interview. But he's basically this new little fella who's been helping us with our editing and sound mixing and making the audio sounds.
Little Saudi Arabian fella.
He's not a Saudi Arabian. He's a little French fella though. It's a little French fella. So merci.
I don't think he's
merci
French.
Camelon.
Merci beaucoup. I think he lives in France. I don't think he's French.
All welcome here. I love all nationalities here.
Well, yeah, of course. I don't as if I don't. No, but he's doing some great work with the editing and things. And we still edit it. Miles still edits it, but he's doing some great work with the sound. So hopefully, let us know if you notice a noticeable difference from the Luke Campbell interview onwards in our audio quality, because we're really trying to get this as professional sounding as possible.
And next week we'll be returning back to our sort of main run of the core shows, and a lot of people getting very excited about the next two shows.
Yeah, I am too. It's not this one; it's the next one, isn't it?
Yeah, I know.
That's the big show.
But if you do want to listen to more shows, if you can't get enough DTS, do join us on Patreon. And we're going to do a really special recording now, which we are going to compare and review the new Office podcast, the American Office podcast, where they chat to Ricky and Steve. Both ask similar questions, but both approach things very differently.
Yeah, that'll all be on Patreon. So go over to Patreon, join us if you can.
How much should people spend on Patreon, Gary? What would be your?
I wouldn't go above 75 quid, and I think that's fair. So if you're thinking, don't go above 75, but around sort of 60, 62, 63 a month.
Yeah, gets a lot of side, gets a lot of aspects.
No, £5 a month. That's great. Yeah, but anyway, thanks guys, and we'll see you on the other side somewhere.
Goodbye.